I never thought my life would take such a drastic turn, especially not during a time when I was fighting one of the hardest battles of my life. My name is James, and I'm a 39-year-old guy who recently came out of cancer treatment. The irony isn't lost on me. I beat cancer, but I couldn't beat the betrayal that followed. My wife, Rachel, and I had been together for a decade. We had what I thought was a solid marriage. We were the couple that friends would describe as the perfect pair, always laughing, supporting each other through thick and thin. But as I lay in a hospital bed, undergoing grueling chemotherapy, I started to notice some cracks in our seemingly perfect facade. Initially, it was subtle. Rachel would come to the hospital later than usual, often with a tired smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She claimed it was work, that her responsibilities at the marketing firm were piling up. I believed her, of course. I wanted to believe that the stress of my illness was weighing on her, too. But as the months went by, her work excuses became more frequent, and I couldn't help but feel something was off. The moment I discovered her infidelity was completely unplanned. One night I was home resting, still weak from the treatments, when I decided to check my email. As I clicked around, a message popped up on Rachel's phone, which was lying unattended on the kitchen counter. It was a notification from a dating app. My heart sank as I read the name of the sender, Mike. I didn't recognize the name, but my gut told me it was trouble. I tried to shake it off, thinking it was just a mistake or some harmless chat. But the next day I found myself unable to concentrate on anything else. I snooped around, looking for more clues. I found her phone again and, without thinking, opened the app. The messages were explicit, filled with flirtation and innuendo, and it was clear they had been seeing each other for weeks, if not longer. The betrayal hit hard. It felt like a punch to the gut, leaving me gasping for breath. How could she do this to me? I was fighting for my life, and she was out there having the time of her life with someone else. The anger bubbled up inside me, and I felt a mix of emotions: shock, rage, and an overwhelming sense of heartbreak. I didn't know what to do next. Should I confront her right away, or should I gather more evidence? I decided on the latter. I needed to be sure to have undeniable proof of her treachery before I could confront her. For the next few days I watched her closely, noting all the little changes in her behavior: the late nights, the secretive phone calls, the lingering scent of unfamiliar cologne. Each new detail fed the fire of my growing resentment. Then came the day when I couldn't keep it in any longer. I had found enough evidence, a series of texts that were impossible to misinterpret. It was time to confront Rachel. As she walked in that evening, her usual bubbly self, I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on my shoulders. "Rachel, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady as I gestured for her to sit down. The look on her face went from confusion to concern, and I knew then that she had no idea I was onto her. I laid it all out: every message, every detail I had uncovered. I didn't hold back. I wanted her to see how deeply her actions had cut me. At first she tried to deny it. "James, you're misunderstanding. It's just some friends from work. We're just joking." But I wasn't having any of it. Her excuses sounded hollow, each lie more infuriating than the last. When she finally collapsed into tears, I felt a strange mix of anger and pity. She pleaded with me, saying it was a moment of weakness, that she had felt so alone while I was sick. I wanted to scream that her weakness was a choice, a conscious decision to betray me at the worst moment in our lives. The confrontation left me feeling like I had been hit by a truck. I could barely process what had just happened. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the feeling of being utterly alone, even with her in the room. I had fought a relentless battle against cancer, but the emotional turmoil that followed was a different kind of fight, one I wasn't prepared for. I had to gather my thoughts and figure out how to move forward. What would I do next? Would I forgive her? Or was this a line that couldn't be crossed? It was a decision I never thought I'd have to make. To be continued. After that crushing confrontation, I was in a whirlwind of emotions. I didn't sleep well that night, replaying our conversation over and over in my mind. I oscillated between anger and sadness, each feeling more suffocating than the last. I had fought to survive cancer, only to discover that my wife had been fighting to escape me during my darkest hours. The next morning, I woke up feeling like a ghost in my own home. Rachel had spent the night crying on the couch, a stark contrast to the vibrant woman I once knew. I didn't know how to face her. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand answers for why she had thrown away our vows so easily. But another part of me was just exhausted. I had fought a battle against cancer, and now I was facing a different kind of war within my own heart. As the day wore on, I found myself walking through our neighborhood, trying to clear my head. The sun was shining, and life around me seemed untouched by the chaos that had erupted in my marriage. I watched families play in the park, couples hold hands, and wondered how many of them had faced their own storms. Everyone has their struggles, I thought, but I never expected mine to come from the person I thought I could trust the most. The hours ticked by, and I finally decided I needed to face Rachel again. I returned home, determined to have a serious conversation. She was sitting at the dining table, her face pale and drawn. I could see in her eyes that she was still wrestling with her guilt, but that pitiful look only fueled my anger further. "Rachel, I need you to be honest with me," I said, keeping my voice steady. "How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, her eyes darting away from mine. "A few months, but it didn't mean anything, I swear. I felt so alone." The words sliced through me. Alone, alone while I was fighting for my life. "You were supposed to be my partner, my support." Rachel started to cry again, and part of me felt pity for her, but pity wasn't going to heal my wounds. "You need to understand how this feels for me," I said. "I thought we had something solid, something unbreakable, and then I find out you've been sleeping with another man while I was in treatment. How do you expect me to just forgive that?" She took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. "I know I messed up. I really do. But please, James, I want to fix this. We can go to counseling, work through it together. You can't just throw everything away." I felt the weight of her words. Could I really throw everything away? We had built a life together, shared dreams, and had weathered storms before, but the betrayal ran deep. I shook my head slowly. "You made the choice to betray me when I needed you the most. I can't just pretend it didn't happen." My heart was racing, and the emotional weight of the moment was overwhelming. I needed space to process everything, to think clearly about what I wanted. I felt like I was standing on a precipice, and I had to decide whether to take a step back or plunge into the unknown. In the days that followed, Rachel kept trying to reach out to me, expressing her regret and begging for a second chance. But I was torn. Part of me wanted to hold on to what we had, to try and salvage our marriage, but another part of me felt like that would be a betrayal of my own self-respect. I confided in a close friend, Mark, who had been incredibly supportive during my treatment. He listened patiently as I recounted everything that had happened. "James, you deserve someone who will stand by you, not someone who runs away when things get tough," he said. "You need to think about what's best for you. Healing from cancer was hard enough. You don't need to be dragged down by someone who hurt you like this." His words struck a chord. I realized I had been so focused on Rachel's feelings that I hadn't considered my own. I had endured so much, and I owed it to myself to prioritize my own well-being. The thought felt liberating but terrifying at the same time. Finally, after days of wrestling with my emotions, I made my decision. I would no longer let Rachel's actions dictate my worth or happiness. I needed to move forward, not just from her betrayal, but towards my own healing. I confronted Rachel again a few days after our last talk. "I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice steady. "I need to focus on my own healing, and I can't have you dragging me down. I think we need to separate for a while." The look on her face was one of devastation. "James, please don't do this. I'll do anything to make it right." But I had made up my mind. It was time to drop the toxin from my life, and that meant letting go of our marriage, at least for now. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with grief. This was not how I had envisioned my life post-cancer. But sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most profound healing. To be continued. After I made the decision to separate from Rachel, I felt like I was finally taking control of my life again. I had spent so long feeling powerless against cancer, and now I was reclaiming that power in a different context. Still, letting go of my marriage was not easy. There were moments when guilt would creep in, making me question my choices. Was I being too harsh? Could I have done something differently to prevent this? But each time those thoughts surfaced, I reminded myself of the pain I had endured and the betrayal that had shattered my trust. The first few weeks after the separation were a blur of emotions. I felt a strange mix of liberation and sorrow. I moved into a small apartment nearby, filled with bare essentials, just a bed, a couch, and a few boxes of my belongings. It felt like starting over, and in some ways it was exactly what I needed. I was no longer consumed by the memories of our life together, and I could focus on healing, both physically and emotionally. I started to lean on the support of friends more heavily. Mark was a constant presence, always ready to lend an ear or share a laugh. He reminded me that I was a survivor, that I had fought through the darkest days of my life. "You're stronger than you think, James," he told me one evening as we sat on the balcony of my new place, beers in hand. "You've already beaten cancer, you can beat this too." But the emotional scars were hard to shake. Late at night, when the world was quiet, the weight of the betrayal pressed down on me. I would often replay the moments leading to our confrontation, wondering how I had missed the signs. I even found myself scrolling through old photos of us, searching for clues in our happier times. It was a painful process, as nostalgia often is, but I was determined to work through it. One pivotal moment came when I decided to seek therapy. It was a suggestion from Mark, but I was initially hesitant. I had always thought of therapy as a last resort, something reserved for those truly broken. But I realized that if I was going to heal, I needed a safe space to explore my feelings and work through the trauma of both my cancer treatment and the betrayal. My therapist, Lisa, was insightful and compassionate. During our first session, I laid everything bare: my cancer journey, Rachel's infidelity, and the emotional upheaval I was grappling with. "It's important to remember that you're not defined by others' actions," she said. "You have the power to choose your path moving forward." Those words stuck with me. I began to see that I had been allowing Rachel's betrayal to dictate how I viewed myself. I was more than just a husband who was cheated on. I was a survivor, a warrior, and I needed to embrace that identity. As the weeks passed, I focused on self-care. I re-engaged with hobbies I had neglected during treatment, like painting and hiking. I even started running, something I had never been particularly fond of, but I found solace in the rhythm of my feet hitting the pavement. It was a way to channel my anger and frustration, a physical release that felt empowering. But even as I started to heal, I couldn't help but feel a lingering pit of resentment towards Rachel. I didn't want to wish her ill, but the idea of her moving on while I was still in pain gnawed at me. I would occasionally hear from her through text messages, each one filled with apologies and pleas for forgiveness. "I miss you, James. I'm so sorry," she right? But each message only served to remind me of the wound she had inflicted. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling run, I returned home and found a message from Rachel that shook me. "I'm seeing someone new," she wrote. "It's serious." My heart dropped. I felt a rush of emotions: anger, betrayal, and even a hint of jealousy. How could she move on so quickly? Did she really care about our marriage, or was I just a chapter she was ready to close? That night I couldn't shake the feeling. I called Mark, seeking solace. "She's already moved on," I said, my voice thick with frustration. "It's like our marriage meant nothing to her." "James, it's not about her anymore," Mark reminded me. "You're on your own journey. Focus on your healing, your happiness. Don't let her choices hold you back." I took a deep breath, trying to absorb his words. It was true. I was on my own path, and I couldn't let Rachel's actions dictate my happiness. I started to redirect my energy back to myself, focusing on the goals I had set during therapy. I wanted to rebuild my life, my identity, and I refused to allow her betrayal to keep me anchored in the past. As the days turned into weeks, I felt a gradual shift. I was no longer just a cancer survivor. I was becoming someone who could thrive outside of that battle. I started reconnecting with old friends, going out more, and even considering the possibility of new relationships. The thought was daunting, but a part of me began to feel excited about the future. However, just when I thought I could finally move forward, Rachel reached out again. This time she wanted to meet in person. My heart raced at the thought. Did she want to apologize again, or was there something more? I had no idea what to expect, but I knew I had to approach this meeting with caution. To be continued. The day of my meeting with Rachel arrived, and I felt a mix of anxiety and resolve. I had spent the morning pacing in my apartment, trying to gather my thoughts. Part of me was curious about what she wanted, while another part was terrified of reopening wounds that were still healing. The last time we had been face to face, it had been a confrontation filled with raw emotion. Now, however, I was determined to approach this with a level head. We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop near my apartment. As I walked in, I spotted Rachel sitting at a table by the window. She looked different, slightly worn, but there was a new air about her that suggested she had been reflecting on her choices. I took a deep breath and approached her, trying to suppress the flood of emotions rising within me. "Hey," I said, keeping my tone neutral as I took a seat. "Hi," she replied, her voice softer than I remembered. There was a moment of silence between us, filled with unspoken words and lingering tension. "Thanks for meeting me," Rachel said, breaking the silence. "I really wanted to talk." I nodded, unsure of how to respond. Rachel's eyes flickered with an emotion I couldn't quite place. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since everything happened," she continued. "And I realized how much I hurt you. I'm really sorry for that." Her apology felt genuine, but it also felt too late. "Rachel, I appreciate you saying that, but I'm at a different point in my life now. I'm trying to heal and move on." I know," she said, her voice trembling. "But I needed you to hear me out. I made mistakes and I've been working on myself since we separated. I've been going to therapy just like you." I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Have you? That's good, but what does that really mean for us?" Rachel took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I hope you can see that I'm trying to change. I miss you, James. I know I messed up, but I want to make things right. I want to work on our marriage." The words hung in the air between us, dense with implications. I had spent weeks trying to distance myself from her actions, and now she was asking for another chance. My heart raced as I struggled to process her request. "You think we can just pick up where we left off?" "I can't forget what you did," I replied, my voice laced with frustration. "I know it won't be easy," she said, her eyes pleading. "But I want to prove to you that I can be the partner you deserve. I don't want to lose you without trying." I felt an overwhelming rush of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to believe her, to accept her offer of reconciliation, but the other part was still reeling from the betrayal. I thought about all the pain I had endured, all the nights spent grappling with my feelings of loneliness and anger. Could I really trust her again? "Rachel, I need time," I said finally, my voice steady. "I'm still processing everything. I'm not sure I can just jump back into this." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I understand. I just wanted you to know where I stand. I'm here and I'm willing to do whatever it takes." As we sat in silence, sipping our coffees, I couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness for what once was. I had loved her fiercely, and yet the love I felt now was laced with caution. I wanted to believe in the possibility of healing and reconciliation, but the fear of being hurt again loomed large. Over the next few weeks, we kept in touch, texting sporadically and occasionally meeting for coffee. Each time I saw small changes in her. She was more open, more vulnerable, and yet the specter of her betrayal hung over us both like a thick fog that wouldn't lift. I continued to focus on my own healing, immersing myself in therapy and spending time with friends. However, Rachel's presence in my life was a constant reminder of the pain I had tried to distance myself from. One evening, I received a text from Rachel that caught me off guard. "Can we talk again? I feel like I owe you more than just apologies." I hesitated, but I knew I needed to address the unresolved tension between us. We arranged to meet again, and as I walked into the coffee shop, I felt the familiar mix of anxiety and anticipation swirling within me. Rachel looked nervous as she sat down, her fingers fidgeting with the sleeve of her sweater. "Thank you for meeting me again," she said, her voice shaky. "I've been doing a lot of thinking and I want to be completely honest with you." I nodded, urging her to continue. "I've been talking to my therapist about everything, and I realized that my decision to cheat wasn't just a moment of weakness. It stemmed from my own insecurities and the fear of losing you during your illness. I pushed you away because I was scared." Her words struck a chord within me. I could see how deeply she was reflecting on her actions, and yet the pain was still fresh. "Rachel, you had every opportunity to communicate with me. I was right there fighting for my life, and you chose to betray me instead." "I know, and I can't change what happened," she said, her voice cracking. "But I want you to know that I've taken responsibility for my actions. I'm committed to making sure this never happens again, not just for us, but for myself as well." As I listened to her speak, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could work through this, but the fear of opening myself up again was overwhelming. Still, I knew I had to be honest with myself. "I need time, Rachel. I can't promise anything right now. I'm still figuring out what I want." "I understand," she replied, and for the first time I saw a flicker of acceptance in her eyes. "I just wanted you to know that I'm here, ready to do the work whenever you are." As we parted ways that evening, I felt a mix of hope and uncertainty. Could we truly rebuild what had been broken, or was I simply delaying the inevitable? The road ahead was unclear, but for the first time in a long time I felt a glimmer of possibility. To be continued. In the weeks that followed our latest meeting, I found myself in a confusing limbo. Rachel and I were in constant communication, but it felt more like a dance than a true reconciliation. I was hesitant to fully let her back into my life, yet I couldn't deny the small flickers of hope that were igniting within me. Her commitment to change was palpable, and I could see she was genuinely trying to make amends. But every time I thought about the betrayal, the anger would rear its ugly head, reminding me just how deeply she had hurt me. I continued my therapy sessions, exploring my feelings about Rachel and my journey of healing. Lisa, my therapist, encouraged me to consider what I truly wanted out of this situation. "You've come so far, James. This is about your happiness, your healing. Don't feel pressured to rush into anything," she reminded me during our sessions. I appreciated her guidance, but the pressure I felt was self-imposed. I wanted to believe in the possibility of a future with Rachel, but fear held me back. One weekend, I decided to take a short trip to the mountains for some solitude. I needed to clear my head and reconnect with myself away from the chaos of everyday life. As I hiked, surrounded by nature, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The fresh air filled my lungs, and I reveled in the beauty of the world around me. It was during this time that I realized I needed to be honest with myself about what I truly wanted. I found myself reflecting on the core of our relationship. I realized that I still loved Rachel, but the trust had been shattered. Love alone wouldn't be enough to rebuild what we once had. I needed to see real change, consistent effort on her part, and a commitment to rebuilding our foundation brick by brick. When I returned from my trip, I felt more grounded and clear-headed. I decided it was time to meet Rachel again. We agreed to meet at a park, a neutral setting that felt less charged than the coffee shop. As I approached her, I saw the nervousness in her eyes, but also a determination that mirrored my own. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down on the bench beside her. "I've missed you." "I've missed you too," I admitted, but there was a catch in my throat. "But I need to be real with you. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I want to talk about where we go from here." Rachel nodded, her expression reflective. "I want to hear you out. I know that I've made mistakes, and I don't want to push you into something you're not ready for." "I appreciate that," I said, preparing to lay out my thoughts. "I still care about you, but I can't pretend the betrayal doesn't still hurt. Trust has to be rebuilt, and that takes time. I need to see that you're committed to making real, lasting changes." "I know," she replied, her voice steady. "I'm willing to show you that I'm serious about this. I've been taking steps to work on myself, and I want to prove to you that I can be the partner you deserve. I'm committed to rebuilding that trust, whatever it takes." As we talked, I could see the sincerity in her eyes. I wanted to believe her. "But it can't just be words, Rachel. I need to see actions that back them up. I can't just forget the past. I need time to process everything and to see that you're willing to put in the effort." "I understand," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll be patient. I don't want to lose you, and I'm ready to show you that I can change." The conversation was cathartic, and as we continued to talk, I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to crack. Perhaps there was a path forward for us, but it would require hard work and dedication on both sides. In the days that followed, I made it a point to be open with Rachel about my feelings. I reached out to her more frequently, and we began to create a new rhythm in our communication. We talked about our dreams, our fears, and our hopes for the future. I appreciated her willingness to be vulnerable, and I found myself slowly letting my guard down. But just when I thought we were making real progress, I got a text from Mark, asking if I wanted to grab dinner. I hesitated for a moment but accepted. I valued his insight and I needed to confide in him about my evolving feelings regarding Rachel. Over dinner, I laid it all out. I'm starting to see changes in Rachel and I'm hopeful, but I'm terrified of getting hurt again. It's like walking a tightrope, I confessed, swirling the wine in my glass. Mark nodded, his expression thoughtful. That's completely understandable. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight and it sounds like you're being cautious, which is a good thing. Just make sure you're looking out for yourself too. Don't be afraid to put your needs first. His words resonated with me. I realized that while I wanted to support Rachel, I couldn't lose sight of my own healing journey. I had come too far to allow fear of being alone to cloud my judgment. As I continued to navigate the complexities of my relationship with Rachel, I noticed a shift in my perspective. I was beginning to see her as a person who was genuinely trying to change rather than just someone who had betrayed me. It was a small but significant transformation in my mindset. However, the road ahead remained uncertain. I still had fears and doubts, but I felt more prepared to confront them. I knew that moving forward would require patience, communication, and an unwavering commitment to rebuilding our relationship. With this newfound clarity, I took a deep breath and prepared to embrace whatever came next, ready to face the challenges of rebuilding trust together. To be continued. As I continued to navigate my evolving relationship with Rachel, I found myself at a crossroads. The emotional weight of betrayal still loomed over us, but I was starting to see the possibility of a new beginning. I was learning to balance my hope with my need for self-protection, a delicate dance that required constant awareness. Each day brought new challenges but also opportunities for growth. One evening, we decided to go for a walk together in a nearby park. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the trees, and I felt a sense of calm wash over me. As we strolled side by side, I could sense the tension loosening between us. Rachel seemed more relaxed, more genuine, and I found myself mirroring her energy. "James, I want to thank you for being patient with me," she said, breaking the comfortable silence. "I know I don't deserve it, but it means a lot. You have no idea how much I'm working on myself because of this." I nodded, grateful for her honesty. "I appreciate that, Rachel, but I also need to be clear that rebuilding trust will take time. I'm still figuring out my feelings about everything. I need to see consistent actions from you, not just promises." "Absolutely," she replied, her voice firm. "I understand what I did was unforgivable, and I'm committed to proving that I can be better for you and for us. It's going to take time, but I'm ready to put in the work." That conversation marked a turning point for me. I felt a flicker of hope that we could forge a new path, but I also knew that I had to remain vigilant. I couldn't afford to ignore the lessons I had learned from my experience. The journey would require both of us to be open, honest, and willing to address the uncomfortable truths. Over the next few weeks, Rachel and I continued to take small steps forward together. We went on dates, laughed over shared stories, and began to create new memories that felt lighter and filled with potential. I noticed genuine changes in her behavior. She was more communicative, more present, and less defensive. It sparked something in me, reigniting the connection we once had. Yet I still had moments of doubt. There were nights when I found myself lying awake, wondering if I was making a mistake. I feared that I might be setting myself up for another heartbreak. Each time those thoughts crept in, I reminded myself of the journey I had undertaken, both in surviving cancer and in navigating the pain of betrayal. One night, after a particularly lovely dinner, we found ourselves lying on the grass, staring up at the stars. "Do you think we can really make this work?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Rachel looked over at me, her expression serious. "I believe we can. I know I hurt you deeply and I can't change that, but I want to build a future that we can be proud of. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Her sincerity washed over me like a balm. I felt a wave of emotion, realizing that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to move forward. The journey wasn't going to be easy, but nothing worth having ever is. As we talked about our dreams and aspirations, I felt a sense of connection rekindling. We shared laughter and vulnerability, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of optimism about our relationship. I knew that the road ahead would still have its bumps, but I was beginning to believe that we could navigate them together. In the months that followed, Rachel continued to show up in ways that mattered. She prioritized our time together, made an effort to communicate openly, and even sought out additional therapy to address her own issues. Watching her take responsibility for her actions and commit to her own growth became a powerful motivator for me as well. As spring turned into summer, we found ourselves becoming closer than we had been in years. It was as though we were rediscovering each other, shedding the layers of hurt that had accumulated in the past. It felt different this time, more grounded, more authentic. I began to open my heart to the idea of a future with Rachel again. It was a slow process, but I was willing to take that journey with her. We talked about rebuilding our relationship, establishing new traditions, and finding ways to support each other in our individual healing journeys. One evening, as we were sitting on the couch, I took a deep breath and said, "Rachel, I've been thinking about us a lot. I want to move forward and see where this takes us. I still have reservations, but I'm willing to try." Her eyes sparkled with hope. "Really? That means everything to me, James. I know it's going to take time, but I promise to do everything I can to show you that I'm committed to this." In that moment, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. There would still be challenges, but I was learning that healing isn't linear. It was about growth, forgiveness, and the willingness to confront the messiness of life together. As we began to rebuild our relationship, I held on to the lessons I had learned throughout this journey. I was stronger than I had ever realized, not just as a survivor of cancer, but as a man willing to embrace vulnerability, love, and the complexities of human connection. In the end, I learned that life is unpredictable. It can take unexpected turns, and sometimes, what feels like the end can be the beginning of a new chapter. I was ready to step into that chapter with Rachel, hopeful and determined to create a future filled with love, resilience, and a deeper understanding of one another. No matter where this journey took us, I knew one thing for certain. I was ready to embrace the possibilities ahead.